Sometimes the person everyone refuses to hire is the one who knows exactly what a company has been trying to hide. Ryan Cooper first noticed Natalie Pierce at 5:40 on a Friday evening, sitting alone on a folding chair outside the hiring office at Redwood Supply Corporation's Columbus warehouse. Ryan was 42, a white American single father who supervised the evening shift and measured most days by whether shipments left on time and whether he could get home before his 11-year-old daughter Maddie fell asleep. That Friday, neither seemed likely. 2 workers had called out, 78 orders were behind schedule, and Ryan needed someone for the final open warehouse position. He entered the hiring office searching for applications and found Natalie's resume beneath a stack marked rejected. Across the top, someone had written 3 words in red ink: "Do not hire." Ryan looked through the glass wall at the woman waiting outside. She appeared about 37, with blonde hair pulled into a simple ponytail, tired blue eyes, black work pants, and a plain gray sweater beneath an inexpensive winter coat. Nothing about her explained the warning. Her resume showed administrative and logistics experience, followed by a 5-year employment gap. No recent references. Ryan carried the application outside. Natalie Pierce? She stood immediately. Yes. You've been waiting long? 2 hours and 17 minutes. Ryan almost smiled. You counted. I noticed numbers. 3 managers reviewed this application. Natalie glanced at the red handwriting. I know. Why didn't they hire you? You'd have to ask them. I'm asking you why you think they didn't. She considered the question. Because 5 blank years make people uncomfortable. Ryan sat in the chair opposite her. What happened during those years? Natalie's expression became guarded. Family responsibilities. Anything that prevents you from lifting 40 pounds, working evenings, or learning warehouse equipment. No. Can you do the work? Yes. Ryan studied her for several seconds. He had spent enough years raising Maddie alone to understand that gaps in a life rarely fit neatly inside. Application boxes. Then you start tonight. Natalie blinked. You're hiring me? Probationary shift. Same starting rate as everyone else. $18.75 an hour. She looked down at the application as though the decision meant far more than the paycheck. You haven't called my references. You don't have recent ones. That doesn't concern you? Your work will tell me more. Ryan handed her a temporary badge and walked her onto the warehouse floor. Rows of steel shelving stretched beneath bright industrial lights, while forklifts moved pallets toward loading bays. Natalie stopped for half a second, staring across the facility with an expression Ryan couldn't identify. It wasn't nervousness. It looked almost like recognition. Been inside a Redwood warehouse before? He asked. Not this one. The answer was strangely precise. Ryan showed her the scanning station, safety vest rack, and inventory terminal. Natalie struggled immediately with a manual pallet jack, turning it the wrong direction and nearly wedging herself between 2 empty pallets. A nearby worker laughed. Ryan didn't. Nobody arrives knowing everything, he said, repositioning her hands. Try again. Natalie did. 20 minutes later, she was scanning cartons when she suddenly stopped. Ryan, these shouldn't be routed to Dock 6. He checked the screen. System says 6. Then the system is wrong. This product category should consolidate with Route 214 before regional dispatch. Ryan stared at her. How would you know that? Natalie seemed to realize what she had said. Lucky guess. Ryan entered the shipment code. A warning appeared, confirming a routing conflict that could have delayed hundreds of orders. He slowly turned toward his newest employee. Natalie was already working again. Behind her, the temporary badge read Entry-Level Warehouse Associate. But when Ryan glanced back at the rejected application, he noticed something he had missed before. Beside the Redwood Company logo, Natalie had unconsciously written a correction to an internal routing code in the margin, a code even most supervisors had never been taught. By 7:15 p.m., Ryan had learned 2 things about Natalie Pierce. She was terrible with a pallet jack, and she understood Redwood's inventory system better than employees who had worked there for years. After correcting the Dock 6 routing error, Natalie returned to scanning cartons without mentioning it again. Ryan did not. He pulled up Route 214 on his terminal and discovered her correction had prevented 3 mixed pallets from traveling nearly 180 miles in the wrong direction before being rerouted. "Lucky guess?" he asked when she passed the station. Natalie kept walking. "A good one. About a routing protocol that isn't in the employee handbook?" She stopped. "I told you I've worked around logistics. Your resume says administrative operations. Logistics involves administration. And secret routing codes?" Natalie gave him a faint smile. "Are you regretting hiring me? Ask me after you learn to steer that pallet jack." For the next hour, Ryan trained her exactly as he would any new employee. He showed her how to position loads safely, use the handheld scanner, verify labels, and report damaged merchandise. When 2 workers snickered after Natalie struggled to turn another pallet, Ryan stepped beside her instead of taking over. "Slow down. Watch the rear wheels." Natalie tried again and made the turn cleanly. "Better." That sounded almost like praise. "Don't get comfortable." She smiled, and Ryan returned to his station. What surprised him was that Natalie never acted embarrassed about needing help. She asked questions, repeated tasks until she understood them, and carried the same boxes as everyone else. Yet whenever she reached a computer screen, something changed. Her uncertainty disappeared. Near 8:30, a shipment of commercial refrigeration components triggered a system hold. Ryan called Assistant Manager Brent Lawson, who glanced at the alert and ordered the crew to override it. "We need that truck on by 9. Natalie looked at the screen. "That override will double count the inventory." Brent turned toward her. "You started 3 hours ago." "Yes." "Then scan what you're told." Natalie fell silent. Ryan examined the transaction history. Wait. He found 2 matching purchase order numbers. Natalie was right. Overriding the hold would make the warehouse appear to have nearly $64,000 more inventory than it physically possessed. Brent's face tightened. "Just clear it." "Not until inventory control confirms it," Ryan said. "We're already behind." "Then we stay behind." Brent walked away irritated. Natalie watched Ryan. "You just made your night harder. Numbers don't become true because the clock says 9. 10 minutes later, inventory control confirmed the duplicate entry. The hold had prevented a serious accounting error. Ryan looked toward Natalie, but she was helping another worker wrap a pallet. During break, he found her sitting alone with vending machine coffee. "You knew exactly what that error would do," he said. "Anyone could have seen it." Brent didn't. Natalie looked in her cup. Sometimes people stop seeing problems when fixing them would make their numbers look worse. The comment sounded less like observation than experience. Before Ryan could ask more, his phone rang. Maddie was calling because her sitter needed to leave early. Ryan rubbed his forehead. "Everything okay?" Natalie asked. "Single-parent scheduling. My specialty." 20 minutes later, Maddie arrived with her backpack and homework, settling into the glass-walled break room where Ryan could see her from the floor. Natalie's expression softened when she noticed the girl. "Your daughter, Maddie, 11. You bring her here often?" "Only when life ignores my schedule." Natalie watched Ryan leave a sandwich and bottled water beside Maddie's homework before returning to work. For the first time all evening, Natalie seemed shaken by something that had nothing to do with Redwood's computers. Near the end of the shift, Ryan entered the supervisor station and found Natalie studying a printed warehouse performance report someone had left beside the copier. She immediately set it down. "Those reports aren't for associates." Ryan picked it up and noticed a handwritten note in the margin. Natalie had circled a productivity figure and written impossible beside it. "What's impossible?" She hesitated. "That output rate. Not with this staffing level." "How would you know our staffing?" "Model." Natalie looked toward the executive offices above the warehouse floor, then back at Ryan. "Because that model was never supposed to be used this way." Before he could respond, she walked away. Ryan stared after her, then at the report. In tiny print at the bottom was an internal policy revision dated 5 years earlier, the exact year Natalie's unexplained employment gap had begun. On Monday evening, Natalie arrived 15 minutes early and found Ryan repairing a broken label printer while Maddie sat behind the glass wall of the break room, finishing a science assignment. The sitter had canceled again, and Ryan had received permission to keep his daughter there until his shift ended. Your glamorous management office, Natalie said, looking at the screwdriver in his hand. Redwood spears no expense. She smiled, tied back her blonde hair, and started work without being asked. Over the next several hours, Ryan noticed the crew treating her differently. The jokes about the pallet jack had disappeared. Natalie had earned that change herself. She took the least desirable assignments without complaining, helped an older employee reorganize a confusing pick list, and stayed 10 minutes in a break to finish a shipment another worker would otherwise have handled alone. When Brent criticized a young employee named Tyler for falling behind, Natalie quietly moved beside him and helped clear the backlog instead of joining the argument. Ryan watched from across the floor. Whatever life Natalie had lived before Redwood, she understood something many managers never learned. Respect traveled farther when nobody announced they were giving it. Around 8 o'clock, Maddie appeared at the warehouse doorway, holding a sheet of poster board. "Dad, I need help." Ryan checked the loading schedule. "Give me 20 minutes, kiddo." Natalie glanced at the poster. "What's the project? How companies affect communities?" Maddie sighed. "It's due tomorrow, and Dad thinks colored markers count as research." "Colored markers are a cornerstone of American education," Ryan said. Natalie laughed. "I can help while I'm on break." She joined Maddie at the table, asking questions instead of giving answers. "What does a company need besides customers?" Natalie asked. "Workers." "Good. And what do workers need?" Maddie thought. "Money. Definitely. Fair hours." Natalie paused. "That matters more than some people remember." Maddie wrote it down. Ryan brought them vending machine pretzels and noticed Natalie studying his daughter with unexpected tenderness. "Do you have kids?" he asked. "No, family." Natalie's smile weakened. "Not much anymore." Ryan did not push. He knew what it felt like when an ordinary question opened a door someone preferred closed. Later, Maddie asked Natalie why she had taken a warehouse job. Natalie glanced toward Ryan before answering. "I wanted to understand how a company looks from the floor instead of from a report." Ryan stopped stacking paperwork. "That's an unusual answer for a new associate." Natalie corrected herself quickly. "I mean any company." At 9:30, a supervisor ordered mandatory overtime because corporate productivity targets had increased again. Several employees groaned. One woman quietly explained that her daycare closed at 11 and she needed to leave on time. Brent dismissed the concern. Ryan stepped in. "She leaves at 10. I'll cover the hour." "Then your numbers suffer," Brent said. "My numbers don't pick up her kid." Natalie watched the exchange without speaking, but something in her expression changed. After Brent left, she approached Ryan. "Does this happen often?" "More lately." "Mandatory extensions without 48-hour scheduling notice?" Ryan looked at her. "That's strangely specific." Natalie lowered her voice. "Because Redwood policy requires 48 hours except documented emergencies. Nobody here has seen that policy. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist." Before Ryan could question her, Maddie called from the break room, and the moment passed. Near midnight, after the crew left, Ryan found a small notebook beneath Natalie's workstation. He opened it only to identify the owner. Instead, he saw dates, staffing levels, altered productivity numbers, rejected applicants, and names of managers. At the top of one page, Natalie had written, "Columbus Audit, Day 3. Ryan heard footsteps and looked up. Natalie stood 20 feet away, her face suddenly pale. "Give me the notebook, Ryan." He closed it. "Audit." She walked toward him. "Please." As Ryan handed it back, a silver card slipped from between the pages and landed on the floor. Natalie reached for it, but Ryan picked it up first. It carried Redwood's tree logo and one line beneath her name. "Executive access, all locations." Ryan stared at the card, then at the entry-level employee he had hired because nobody else would. Natalie took the badge from his hand and whispered, "You were never supposed to see that." Ryan held Natalie's gaze while the warehouse settled into midnight silence around them. "Executive access," he said. "All locations." Natalie slipped the silver card into her notebook. "I can explain some of it. Start with why an entry-level employee carries a badge that could probably open doors my manager can't." She looked toward the security cameras above the loading floor. "Not here." Ryan should have called Brent. Instead, something in her expression stopped him. Natalie wasn't afraid of losing an $18 an hour job. She was afraid someone would discover what she was doing. Tomorrow, she said, give me one more day. You're keeping records on my crew. I'm documenting what management is doing to your crew. That distinction needs an explanation, and you deserve one. Just not tonight. Ryan thought about the altered productivity numbers, the scheduling policy nobody had seen, and the do not hire note on her application. One day, Natalie nodded. Thank you. The following evening, she returned wearing the same gray sweater and temporary associate badge. Ryan treated her exactly as before. She moved pallets, scanned boxes, and took her break with everyone else. But he watched more carefully now. Around 7:30, Natalie disappeared from her assigned section. Ryan found her near the stairwell leading to Redwood's executive floor, an area restricted to regional leadership. Natalie. She froze with her hand near the security panel. Lost. I need to check something upstairs. Associates aren't allowed upstairs. I know. She pulled out the silver badge. The reader flashed green. Ryan stared at the unlocked door. That card is real. Yes. Who gave it to you? Natalie looked up the staircase. Technically no one. Before Ryan could stop her, footsteps sounded above them. Natalie stepped back and let the door close. A regional manager descended without noticing them in the shadowed hallway. Once he passed, Ryan folded his arms. Your one day is getting shorter. Natalie lowered her voice. Someone has been altering labor reports before they reach corporate review. The numbers on the floor don't match the numbers being submitted upstairs. Why do you care? Because people are being judged by those numbers. People are losing hours, being rejected for jobs, and working schedules that violate company policy. You still haven't answered why you have executive access. Natalie's phone vibrated. She checked the screen and immediately walked toward an empty corridor. Ryan stayed where he was, but the warehouse acoustics carried her voice. I found the Columbus records, she said quietly. A pause followed. No, they don't know who I am. Ryan's attention sharpened. Natalie continued. The rejection system is worse than we thought. They're filtering applicants with caregiving gaps before interviews. Another pause. That explains my application. They rejected me exactly the way they've rejected everyone else. Ryan remembered her 5 missing years. I need the original labor reports before Monday, Natalie said. If they discover I'm here before the audit is finished, they'll destroy the evidence. Ryan stepped around the corner. Natalie ended the call instantly. So that's why you applied, he said. You wanted them to reject you. Natalie's silence answered enough. Who are you auditing for? Ryan, you have access to every location. You know policies supervisors don't know. You understand systems you supposedly never used. Who are you? Before she could answer, the executive elevator chimed at the far end of the corridor. Both turned. The doors opened, and Redwood's regional president, Gregory Walsh, stepped out with 2 senior executives. Natalie immediately lowered her face and moved toward the warehouse floor before. They saw her. Ryan followed, more confused than ever. Minutes later, Gregory stopped beside Brent and spoke quietly. Ryan caught only part of the conversation. Corporate security flagged an unauthorized executive credential in this building last night. Brent frowned. Whose credential? Gregory handed him a printed access report. Natalie Pierce. Ryan felt his stomach tighten. Gregory's expression became unusually serious. If that woman is working in this warehouse, find her before headquarters learns we let her onto the floor. Across the aisle, Natalie stood beneath the fluorescent lights, scanning boxes like an ordinary new hire. Then Gregory looked in her direction, and for the first time since Ryan had met her, Natalie Pierce looked genuinely afraid of being recognized. Gregory Walsh stared across the warehouse until his eyes settled on Natalie. The change in his face was immediate. He stopped speaking to Brent, handed the access report to another executive, and walked toward her with the stiff posture of a man who had just realized his worst possibility was standing 20 yards away wearing a safety vest. Natalie slowly lowered her scanner. Ryan moved closer, expecting Gregory to demand her badge or order security to escort her out. Instead, the regional president stopped several feet away and said, Ms. Pierce. Brent frowned. You know her? Gregory ignored him. We weren't informed you were visiting Columbus. Natalie's fear disappeared behind a calm Ryan had never seen before. That was intentional. The two senior executives behind Gregory exchanged nervous glances. Workers nearby stopped scanning boxes. Brent stepped forward. Greg, this woman is a probationary warehouse associate. Cooper hired her Friday. Gregory turned pale. He hired her. Nobody else would, Ryan said. Silence spread across the loading floor. Gregory looked back at Natalie. Does headquarters know you're here? Only 2 people. Then perhaps we should continue this upstairs. No. Natalie removed her temporary badge and placed it on a packing table. We'll talk here. Brent laughed uneasily. Can someone explain what's happening? Gregory looked as though he wanted anyone else to answer. Natalie finally did. My name is Natalie Pierce. I am the controlling shareholder of Redwood Supply Corporation. Ryan thought he had misheard her. Around them, scanners stopped beeping one by one. Controlling shareholder? Brent repeated. Gregory spoke quietly. Ms. Pierce owns 53% of Redwood voting equity. Ryan stared at Natalie. The woman he had taught to steer a pallet jack owned the warehouse, the trucks outside, and ultimately the company signing his paycheck. Natalie met his eyes. My mother's family founded Redwood. 5 years ago, after she became ill, I stepped away from daily operations to care for her. That's the gap on my resume. After she died, her shares transferred to me. Ryan remembered Maddie's school project and Natalie saying she had little family left. Why come here pretending you needed a job? Because reports reaching ownership said turnover was improving, scheduling complaints were declining, and hiring was fair. Anonymous employee messages said the opposite. Every announced audit produced perfect numbers. She looked toward Gregory. So I stopped announcing them. Gregory's jaw tightened. You can have requested records. I did. Those records were altered. Natalie opened her notebook. I applied under the same conditions as ordinary candidates. 3 managers rejected me without an interview because of a caregiving gap. Ryan was the only supervisor who asked whether I could actually do the job. Several workers looked toward Ryan. He felt no pride, only disbelief. And the productivity numbers? He asked. Manipulated before corporate review. Managers were using unrealistic targets to reduce labor costs, then hiding the consequences. Brent shook his head. That's an accusation. It's an audit finding. Gregory stepped closer. Ms. Pierce, this discussion needs legal counsel. Legal counsel is already downstairs. The executive elevator opened again. 4 people entered the warehouse, carrying document cases, accompanied by Redwood's chief compliance officer. Gregory's confidence vanished. Natalie turned toward Ryan. I should have told you sooner. Yeah, he said quietly. You should have. Before she could respond, the compliance officer approached with a tablet. Ms. Pierce, we found something else in the Columbus files. Natalie read the screen, and her expression hardened. What? Ryan asked. She turned the tablet toward him. It showed dozens of rejected applications carrying the same red warning that had appeared on hers. Beneath them were internal messages ordering managers to filter out single parents, caregivers, and applicants with employment gaps because they were considered scheduling risks. Then Ryan saw a familiar name inside the email chain. Gregory Walsh. Natalie looked at the regional president. You didn't just hide what was happening here, she said. You designed it. Gregory said nothing. Ryan looked from the executive to Natalie and understood that her secret identity had only revealed the first layer of the truth. Now the company she secretly owned was about to discover what had been done in her name. The warehouse floor stayed quiet as Gregory Walsh stared at the email chain carrying his name. Natalie did not raise her voice. She simply handed the tablet back to the compliance officer and said, Preserve every record. No files get deleted, no schedules get changed, and nobody on this floor gets punished for cooperating. Gregory adjusted his tie. You're drawing conclusions before reviewing the full context. Then the review will give you every opportunity to provide it. Brent shifted uneasily beside him. Ryan watched Natalie carefully. She suddenly looked every inch the owner of Redwood. But what mattered to him was where her attention went next. Not toward the executives. toward the workers. Your shifts continue normally tonight, she told them. You'll be paid for every minute this interruption caused. Gregory asked to speak privately, and Natalie agreed. Before leaving, she glanced at Ryan. We need to talk too. Later, he said. Ryan returned to his crew. For the next 2 hours, he kept shipments moving while compliance officers collected records upstairs. Near 10:30, Gregory called Ryan into a conference room. Natalie was not there. Brent sat beside Gregory, and an unfamiliar corporate attorney placed a folder on the table. Your performance has been noticed, Gregory said. There's an opening for operations manager. $86,000 a year, better benefits, predictable hours. Ryan immediately thought of Maddie. No more emergency sitters. No more counting grocery money 3 days before payday. What's the catch? The attorney slid a statement toward him. It described Columbus employees as resistant to scheduling changes and claimed inaccurate floor reporting resulted primarily from associate errors. Ryan read it twice. You want me to sign this? You supervise these people, Gregory said. Your confirmation carries weight. It blames them for numbers management changed. It establishes shared responsibility. Ryan pushed the paper back. No, Gregory leaned forward. Think carefully. This promotion could change your daughter's life. Ryan's eyes hardened. Don't use my daughter to sell me a lie. Natalie Pierce can protect you now. Perhaps that makes refusing easier. Ms. Pierce has nothing to do with it. Ryan stood. My crew trusted me before I knew she owned a single share. I'm not trading that trust for a bigger paycheck. He left the folder untouched. 20 minutes later, Brent approached him on the warehouse floor with a printed notice. Pending review, you're suspended effective immediately. Ryan stared at him. For what? Failure to follow management reporting procedures and possible unauthorized disclosure of internal information. Natalie appeared from the executive corridor just as Ryan removed his supervisor badge. What happened? He handed her the notice. Her expression sharpened. This is retaliation. Maybe, but don't fix it by making one phone call. Ryan, I own this company. That's exactly the problem. She went still. You hired me when you thought I had no power, and now everyone knows you have all of it. Ryan lowered his voice. If you order them to put me back tomorrow, nobody will know whether I deserved it or whether the owner likes me. Natalie looked hurt, but she understood. Then what do you want? A fair investigation. Same rules for me as everyone else. Ryan collected his coat and Maddie's backpack. Before leaving, Maddie walked over and hugged Natalie. Are you still coming to see my project when it's finished? Natalie blinked back emotion. If your dad says it's okay. Ryan paused, then nodded. That part was never the problem. He and Maddie disappeared through the employee exit. The next morning, Natalie returned to Redwood headquarters carrying her notebook, the rejected applications, and Ryan's unsigned statement. For the first time in 5 years, she entered the boardroom not merely as an owner protecting an inheritance, but as someone who had worked beneath the policies carrying her family's name. On the table waited a proposal from several directors. Remove Gregory, settle the audit quietly, restore Ryan immediately, and end the scandal. Natalie read it and shook her head. No special treatment for Ryan. Investigate his record properly. Then she placed his rejected promotion statement beside the evidence. And investigate why the only supervisor who refused to blame his workers was the first one suspended. Across town, Ryan received an automated email from Redwood. His employee access had been disabled. Seconds later, another message arrived from an independent law firm retained by Redwood's board. It requested his testimony and contained one sentence that told him Natalie had honored his demand. Ms. Pierce has formally recused herself from all decisions concerning your employment. For the first time in years, Ryan had nowhere to be at 5 p.m. He sat at his kitchen table while Maddie colored the final section of her school project beside him. His suspension remained in effect, but the independent investigators had already interviewed him twice. Ryan gave them everything: scheduling records, staffing shortages, Brent's instructions, Gregory's promotion offer, and a statement he had refused to sign. He did not exaggerate anything to protect Natalie, and he did not soften anything to protect Redwood. Do you think you'll get her job back? Maddie asked. I don't know. Could Natalie make them give it back? Ryan looked at his daughter. Probably. Then why doesn't she? Because I asked her not to. Maddie considered that with the seriousness only an 11-year-old could bring to adult problems. That sounds kind of dumb. Ryan laughed. Financially, maybe. 300 miles away at Redwood headquarters, Natalie faced a different kind of isolation. Gregory had been placed on administrative leave. Brent had admitted managers were pressured to meet unrealistic labor targets, and investigators confirmed that applicant screening rules had disproportionately rejected caregivers, single parents, and people with employment gaps. But several directors wanted the findings handled quietly. Remove the responsible managers, issue a statement, move forward, one director told her. Redwood employs thousands of people. We cannot rebuild policy around one warehouse. Natalie placed Ryan's rejected application files on the conference table. This isn't one warehouse. We found the same filters in 9 distribution centers. Another director leaned forward. Your undercover experiment has already created governance concerns. If you push further, shareholders may question whether you should remain controlling chair. Natalie thought about her mother, the 5 years she had spent away from corporate life caring for her, and how easily Redwood had later treated that same caregiving gap as evidence that she was unreliable. Then they can question me. Over the next 3 weeks, Natalie refused shortcuts. She ordered a nationwide review of hiring filters, scheduling practices, and productivity reporting. She also refused every suggestion that Ryan be promoted as a public relations gesture. He asked for fairness, she reminded the board. Giving him something he didn't earn would disrespect him as much as taking away something he did. Ryan heard almost nothing from her during that time. She sent one message asking how Maddie's project had gone. He replied with a photograph of the finished poster and 3 words. She got an A. Natalie answered with a smiling face and nothing more. The distance bothered Ryan more than he expected. He missed arguing with her about warehouse procedures. He missed the half-smile she gave him whenever he caught her knowing something she supposedly shouldn't. But mostly he missed Natalie before he knew what her name meant inside Redwood. 4 weeks after his suspension, Ryan received a formal letter from the independent investigators. Their findings cleared him of unauthorized disclosure and confirmed that his refusal to alter reports had complied with Redwood's written ethics policy. His suspension would be removed from his record, and he would receive full back pay. Ryan read the letter twice. Natalie had kept her promise. She had not rescued him. The evidence had. The following Monday, Ryan returned to the Columbus warehouse. His crew greeted him with coffee, jokes, and enough applause to make him uncomfortable. Brent was gone pending disciplinary review. Gregory had resigned after the board received the final audit findings. Ryan clipped his supervisor badge back onto his shirt and went to work. At 6:20 p.m., he entered the break room and stopped. Natalie was sitting in the same folding chair where he had first found her, wearing ordinary clothes instead of executive business wear. The rejected application rested on her lap. You're not applying again, are you? Ryan asked. Depends. On what? Natalie stood and handed him a sealed folder. Whether the only supervisor who ever gave me a fair interview is willing to give Redwood one. Ryan opened it. Inside was not an executive promotion. It was a proposal for a new National Frontline Operations Council, led from Columbus, with elected warehouse representatives and authority to review scheduling, hiring, and productivity policies before they reached corporate approval. At the bottom, the leadership position remained blank. I didn't put your name there, Natalie said. You decide whether you want it. Ryan looked at her. And if I say no? Natalie smiled softly. Then for once, the woman who owns the company learns how to accept someone else's decision. Ryan did not answer immediately. He carried the proposal into the supervisor office, read every page, then returned nearly 20 minutes later while Natalie remained in the folding chair. This council can review policy, he said. Yes, but corporate leadership can ignore its recommendations. Under the current draft, yes. Ryan handed the folder back. Then I'm not interested. Natalie blinked. You haven't even asked about compensation. Because that isn't the problem. He sat across from her, just as he had during her first interview. If workers are expected to put their names on recommendations, management should have to explain in writing when those recommendations are rejected. Natalie considered it. Accountability. Exactly. and representatives need protection from retaliation. Agreed. Hourly workers participate on paid time. Agreed. And one more thing. Ryan picked up Natalie's old application. The Redwoods do not hire. 1 year later, Ryan still arrived at Redwood's Columbus warehouse before the evening shift, carrying the same scratched coffee mug and checking the loading schedule before anyone could remind him. His 6-month trial leading the Frontline Operations Council had become a permanent position, but only after representatives from the warehouses voted to keep him. He had refused a corporate office, refused an executive title, and refused to move away from Columbus. His salary had improved enough that emergency childcare no longer threatened the monthly budget, but Maddie still teased him for buying store-brand cereal whenever it was on sale. Redwood had changed too. Employment gaps could no longer automatically disqualify applicants. Scheduling changes required clear notice except during genuine emergencies. Productivity reports showed actual staffing levels instead of convenient numbers, and every council recommendation rejected by management required a written explanation employees could review. The reforms did not make Redwood perfect. Ryan distrusted any company claiming perfection. They simply made it harder for powerful people to hide mistakes behind numbers. Natalie remained controlling owner, but she stopped treating ownership like a distant responsibility that could be managed entirely through reports. Several times each year, she visited warehouses without executive presentations or carefully rehearsed tours. She talked to drivers, warehouse associates, supervisors, and applicants. More importantly, she listened. Gregory Walsh never returned, and the managers involved in manipulating records faced the consequences of Redwood's independent review. Brent left the company as well. Natalie never celebrated either outcome. Replacing people is easier than changing a system, she once told Ryan. I'd rather make sure the system can't reward the same behavior again. Her relationship with Ryan changed more quietly. Because his counsel reported through independent compliance rather than directly to her, they established clear professional boundaries. Outside work, there were Saturday breakfasts with Maddie, walks along the Scioto Mile, and dinners where Natalie was forbidden from discussing quarterly reports. Maddie enforced that rule more strictly than anyone. One evening, she caught Ryan and Natalie holding hands beneath the restaurant table. Finally, Maddie said. Ryan nearly dropped his fork. Natalie laughed until her eyes watered. Nothing about them moved quickly after that. Ryan had already lost one partner and raised a daughter through years of grief and responsibility. Natalie had spent years caring for her mother, then returned to an empire where nearly everyone wanted something from her. They understood that trust was built slowly. The following Friday marked exactly 1 year since Ryan had found Natalie sitting outside the hiring office. When he arrived for work, Natalie was waiting beside the same folding chair. Please tell me you're not applying for another warehouse position, he said. I remember the supervisor being difficult. Excellent judge of character. Natalie handed him a small, framed document. Inside was her original application. Across the top remained the red words, "Do not hire." Beneath them, Ryan had written his decision from that first night. Probationary shift approved. I thought this belonged here, Natalie said. Ryan shook his head. No. Your office. What? Ryan tapped the red rejection mark. Because people with power need reminders more than people without it. Months later, the framed application hung behind Natalie's desk at Redwood headquarters. Visitors occasionally asked why the controlling owner displayed a rejected application for an entry-level warehouse job. Natalie always gave the same answer. Because this company once decided I wasn't worth an interview. Then she pointed to Ryan's handwritten approval beneath it. And one supervisor asked whether I could do the work. That winter, Ryan brought Maddie to headquarters for the first time. She stood before the framed application, studying it carefully. So Dad hired the owner of the whole company? Without knowing it, Natalie said. Maddie smiled. That sounds like Dad. Ryan looked at Natalie. What's that supposed to mean? Maddie shrugged. You don't care who people are until after you decide how to treat them. Ryan became quiet. Natalie reached for his hand. In the end, that was the lesson Redwood could never reduce to a policy or productivity report. Natalie's wealth had given her ownership, but it had not given her Ryan's respect. She earned that herself. Ryan's kindness had opened a door, but he had never expected money, promotion, or influence in return. And the application framed on the billionaire owner's wall remained proof that sometimes the person everyone else overlooks is carrying a story nobody bothered to ask about, while the person willing to offer one fair chance may already possess something no company can purchase: character.